Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening out there to all my viewers in YouTube world. My name is Joshua Duran, going by the handle, you guessed it, Joshua Duran, and this is Adventures with the DM, episode 3. And what we're going to be discussing today is we're going to be talking about setting. Now, let's go ahead and rehash what we talked about in the last two previous episodes. We talked about various tools and introductions for new DMs or even some of the veteran DMs, as well as we discussed in episode 2 world building, world creation, and stuff like that. And now we're going to discuss about setting. Now, world building goes hand in hand with your setting. This is a story. You are creating a story for your players to engage in. Make it as entertaining as possible for them to enjoy it. With that being said, you don't want to have like encounter after encounter after encounter. That's not an exact way of going about things where it's just non-stop action, but build it up how a story would build up in a chapter. They've reached this point from an orc invasion, they're hiding out, and make it more emotional for the player and their character as they go about it. Or they are running away from an enemy just to build up to like a climactic last stand sort of thing, the Alamo or whatever, to engage their enemy. And will they succeed, or will they be lying in defeat? It's up to you as a DM to decide that, but make sure that your players are enjoying it. With that being said, you also want to go ahead and make sure you have all aspects of your game down. Not everyone's going to like everything equally as much as the person to their left or right. And we're like, well, Josh, what do you mean by that? In an RPG, D&D game, there are various elements to be had. Obviously, you have your encounters, your fights, your dramatic sword battles that you're having with each player, or a duel, wizard on wizard duel, or that's one aspect of it. There is also going to be the role-playing side. Some players actually really enjoy playing their characters and having them engage in the world around them. So make sure that your NPCs are engaging in fun, such as your barkeeps, your tavern keepers, your winches, your non-player characters. Allow them to have flaws and their personality and not be pristine and clear. Make them more real to the player so that way they can engage with them as if they're normal people. Now, you also got people who like to explore and look at the environment around them. This is actually very important, especially if you're making a homebrew world. Homebrew world is basically where you're creating your own fantasy world and having your players engage in it, to explore the caves, the history, the cultures, geography, everything that you could possibly imagine for a fantasy setting. They are going to go hand in hand with your world building. So the history of the land and everything else you have to come up with as you go through this. So those of you that are coming up with Homebrew World, I'm sorry, you guys are going to have a lot more preparation to do versus the guys that are actually playing games with pre-published books. Not knocking on those guys, that's cool, but that's just not my thing. I'd rather have them engage in a story that I've developed in a world that I've created specifically for them, and have their players, their playable characters, actually create the story and the heroic deeds in this world. It's kind of like what William Shakespeare said. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely actors. This is so of playing a RPG or a pen and paper RPG. Now, what I like to do to help get my players involved and allow them to see is build terrain. I am not a fan of the grid square system where they are actually using grid squares to, I guess measurement is what it would be for. Sorry, my brain just kind of collapsed on itself. So when you're engaging with characters and stuff like that, you see these grid squares as with like drawn out lines of a supposed house. I'd rather do something right and actually buy stuff like terrain to where they can actually see it, or build terrain, such as these trees that aren't completely completed, but they're getting there. They're like about 80% done, and it works out for the story to have some dead looking trees and everything else. But building terrain, buying terrain goes a long way in getting your players more involved in the story that they see. So how do you measure distance, Josh? Well, you measure distance. 5 feet per inch is kind of what I've done, and I find it works out pretty good. So that way you don't have to worry about grid squares. You just got to worry about tape measures, stuff like that from D&D, or little rulers. So that way they can mark it out and go from there. I find that my players enjoy this a lot more versus having the grid squares and using the full art of imagination and going from there. But these are the terrain pieces, sorry, once again my brain's collapsing in on itself, that I have made to go along with some of the pre-made stuff that I just assembled and painted and had it go with it. So for instance, you can buy Pegasus Hobbies. This is their kit, and it's really customizable and interchanging with their kits to where you can make ruins and such that they can actually encounter. Or Gale Force 9 makes some awesome products, such as these craters. You could use your imagination. They could be cannon craters if you're using the science fiction, or mortar rounds, or if you're in a fantasy setting, trebuchets, catapults, wizard fireballs, whatever you can use for those. And they also make some of these ruins that actually go really well with it. So I thought these were pretty cool. So I picked them up to kind of add to it. And if you're doing a lot as a DM, I mean, especially if you're making a homebrew world, it helps to buy some of these kits to go with it to help set the tone of your story. When you're setting the tone of your story, remember that you want to build up to the big moment and not have the big moment be in the middle and then go downhill from there. So it's just like a story. If you treat it like a story and grab your influences from Tolkien to Glenn Cook to Jim Butcher to Dan Abbott to all those individuals, authors out there, then I'm not saying plagiarize them, but grab influence from them, then I do not see why you should not be a successful DM. So with that being said, I want to know your guys' opinions in regards to setting and everything else. I mean, what else do you guys do for setting? Do you guys use terrain models? Do you guys use pen and paper? Do you guys use the power of your imagination? How does your DM run the show? Oh yeah, also as a little helper, I also like to play music to go in the background. Now, I'm not saying like heavy metal Metallica or Lil Wayne or whoever is out there. Selena Gomez, for the female, I don't know. But actually have something in the background turned down, just barely audible, to help set the mood. It's all a part of setting. And your words play a big part in regards to how the setting is set. So keep in mind when you're writing things down, what kind of verbiage you're using or what kind of words are you using to help set the tone. If you're using, yo, dude, what's up, then that obviously will take away from the effect of running a fantasy campaign. Because I believe in most fantasy worlds, they don't say yo, or dude, or bruh, or anything like that. So keep that in mind as a DM when you're running it. Also have your players engage with you as their character and allow them to get more involved with it and allow them to feel free to explore the environment around them, because that's only going to create more background and more of a tone for the story that you're writing for your players. And with that being said, let me know what your experiences are as a player or as a DM and how you guys run the show. My name is Joshua Duran, and this has been a Joshua Duran production. And thank you for tuning in to Adventures with the DM, Episode 3. Bye-bye.